I'm Ray Barry, and this is the Audio Wave Cafe podcast. On this episode, my guest is musician and author Tim Constable. First, I talk about what's right, what's wrong with TV talent shows, and I'll be shining a spotlight on music producer and Grammy Award winner Roger Lomas. I'll also be playing Don't Go to the Roxy by Paris. Let's move on. If you were anywhere near my age, you will remember Opportunity Knocks and New Faces TV talent shows, both popular in the UK in the 70s and 80s. The first talent show, however, was the BBC's All Your Own, running from 1952 to 61, with a certain Jimmy Page appearing on the programme in April 57. I recall taking a singer from Coventry to a New Faces audition sometime in the 70s. He sang a song of mine accompanied by the TV show's piano player. He didn't stand a chance against at least a 16-member singing group, all dressed as firemen. Those TV shows were pretty harmless fun back then. I found it hilarious when once a singing dog came first on Opportunity Knocks. In fact, any animal, bird or rodent that sings, plays a guitar or just sits forlornly on stage doing nothing will knock the socks off any artists or bands unlucky enough to be on the same show. In 2001 it was Simon Cowell, together with Simon Fuller, who established the TV talent show as a major force on Saturday nights on both sides of the Atlantic, with Pop Idol and American Idol. Then came X Factor, American X Factor. Then in 2006 America's Got Talent, followed a year later by Britain's Got Talent, which is contracted to run till 2024. These are huge shows with huge budgets. Each show costs about $2 million to make. There was one show of Cowell's, I can't remember which, where a contestant was ridiculed by him and laughed off stage by the audience. The thing is, if a contestant was that bad, they should have been filtered out at the initial audition, usually held by the show's producers, before the hapless contestant stepped on stage in front of millions of people. Maybe I'm cynical, but humiliating them makes for a good TV spectacle. Then there's the contestants that bleat and cry when they don't make it through to the next round, whining that their lives are ruined. What? Here's an idea. When these wannabes get home, why don't they save up and buy a guitar and amp or a mic and PA and join or form a band? Then practice and practice some more, honing their crafts and songs. Spend time trudging from venue to venue. Experience the highs and lows of being a performing musician. Or is that too much like hard work? A few contestants from those various talent shows have made it big, very big, like One Direction, Beyonce and Justin Timberlake. But Harry Styles, Beyonce and Timberlake all started singing by joining a choir or group at an early age. They just didn't turn up at a talent show with no more experience than singing a couple of times at a karaoke bar. Maybe I should start a podcast talent show. But singing dogs and other assorted furry creatures need not apply. I don't care if you are in the MU. My guest today has played in a variety of bands in Coventry. He's a keyboard player, songwriter, video producer, author, illustrator and an inventor. Tim Constable, it's a pleasure to have you join me here today.
Thank you, Ray. It's great to be here.
You're a bit of a smarty pants then.
Well, I get ideas for things, whether it's a piece of music or a bit of graphic art or whatever. I just follow it through to its logical conclusion. That's all I do. And I'm interested in a lot of things.
Yeah, that's for sure. Because we played together briefly 40 odd years ago on a demo at Horizon Studios.
That's right, yeah. Which song was that now?
Times of Our Lives.
Oh, yes, that's right.
American Girl.
American Girl. Yes, I do remember that one.
Yeah.
I can't remember how it goes, but I remember being quite struck with that song.
Well, I think your contributions to both songs were really good. And Pat Miller. Your vocalising was really good.
And I did some synthesised stuff on
there.
You did. I remember doing a bit of experimentation. And, if I'd have known better at that young age, I'd have probably tried to follow it up and do some more work at Horizon and find some other studios. But I was in a bit of a little world of my own at that time.
Right. What was the initial spark that kick-started your music career?
Oh, well, I suppose that goes back to when I was about 4 years old. And what happened was that in our house, my dad had inherited a very old, wheezy harmonium. And I eventually got just about tall enough to press a bit on the pedals and play a few notes. And my mum noticed that I was actually picking up tunes off the radio. So she thought, oh, we'd better see if this can be grown into something. And a few doors down the road there was a piano teacher, and so I started going there. So that led me into playing piano and keyboards, and I also, a bit older, joined the local church choir that my mum and dad used to go to, and eventually passed the test to join Coventry Cathedral Choir. So I was a boy soprano there for 4 years, and that's really what sparked my whole interest in music off. And in my teens started to get ideas for songs and try and do a bit of songwriting. And so that's what's led to a whole huge dimension of my life.
Right, so what was your first band?
Right, the first band that I actually joined was a band called Blaze. And what happened was a friend of mine from school called Clive Barnwell, he and I for 2 or 3 years certainly had been working on songs together, developing our writing style and this sort of thing. And we saw an advert saying semi-pro band looking for original material. So we thought we'd answer that, and we went along and met a band called Drops of Brandy. Now, my sort of self-esteem and so on was really still quite at a very low ebb. But we presented some of our songs, which they liked, but it turned out they were more interested in having me as a keyboard player. And at that time, I thought to be a keyboard player in a band, you have to be Rick Wakeman or Keith Emerson or someone like that. But they said, we'd like to have you as a keyboard player. But I really wasn't too keen on the idea. And I said, think about it. And I came across, I think it was another advert of a band wanting a keyboard player. So I went along to see what they were about. And this was a band called Blaze. And we had a bit of a chat, got to sort of like each other, and then they came round to my place and I played them a bit of stuff on the piano. And much to my amazement, their sort of jaws nearly dropped off their heads. They seemed quite amazed at the sort of thing I could do and what I was playing. And so they helped me very much initially, because I'd got no money of my own. They helped me very much initially to buy my first keyboards and an HH 2x12 combo to play them through. I bet that rings some memories, doesn't it?
Just to me, I had a 2x15 with my bass as a bass cabinet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Tony King was in Blaze.
Correct.
Unfortunately, he passed away about 3.5 years ago, but he talked about you several times. I think you had a song, something with wine in the title.
Well, Ashes in My Wine. And we recorded that at the fledgling studio of Roger Lomas, who, of course, as you know, went on to become a Grammy Award-winning producer.
Oh, yeah.
You're like ashes in my wine, and you always are in time, leaving only someone else to something better.
I'll have to get my guitar out. Well, yeah, I never did hear it. Well, Tony didn't mention that you went into a recording studio.
Yeah, we did that. I don't know what happened to the recording, and last time I spoke to Roger, he certainly didn't have any of it left. So I think that is just consigned to the record bin of history.
In 1978, you formed Paris, playing your own original material. Was that a satisfying period for you?
In many ways it was. It was a period of growth and a period of quite excitement in actually starting to hear our songs come to life. And the way Paris formed was, I believe I've mentioned Drops of Brandy. Having been in Blaze for probably about a year or so, Drops of Brandy got back in touch with me. And I suppose you could almost say they poached me from Blaze. And so I started playing with them. There was still vaguely some talk about doing some original material. But we were also, at that time, extremely busy going over to Derby 4 nights a week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, as the house band over at the huge Bailey's Club over there. And that was an interesting time. Obviously, we had to keep up to date with all the current pop stuff of the time. But Bailey's also had name acts on as guests on either the Saturday or the Friday and Saturday. And so we met a few people. And so that was all quite interesting. I remember one of the bands that we met was the band Heatwave. And they were just getting big with their song Boogie Nights. That was one of the songs we'd learned to cover. And because I could handle quite intricate keyboard parts, they actually said that our cover of Boogie Nights was better than their live version.
That's cool, right?
There was all that going on. I was still doing some songwriting with Clive. But we'd been in Drops of Brandy for about, it must have been at least 18 months. And there was still no sign of doing any original material. You know, so much time and work was put into keeping up with the current pop charts for doing the covers act. Eventually myself and the guitarist Steve started to really sort of pressurise it. And lo and behold, suddenly the lead singer decided he could write songs. He'd written a bit of a song, and lo and behold, he started working on that. So that didn't exactly please me greatly. But eventually Ted Duggan, Steve Roberts and myself decided we'd had enough. We clubbed together and decided we would leave Drops of Brandy. So that's what we did. We then realised we'd need a lead singer and a bass player. So we advertised. And lo and behold, that's how Paris formed.
Paris seemed on the way to success, but you left the band in 1983. Why?
Well, we were, yes, getting a certain amount of local support. Those who came to our gigs and knew our musics had a lot of joy from them. But 2 or 3 things conspired against us. One was that we really needed professional management to really take us further forward. During those 5 years, 3 people had come up to us basically saying, you know, we think you're fantastic, we want to manage you, get you professional, etc. They all proved to be not exactly living up to their promises, let's put it that way. Also at the same time, in about 1980-81, there was an explosion in Coventry, of course, of the whole two-tone movement, the ska and reggae thing. And whatever else Paris were, we were not two-tone. So we found that when it came to any sort of professional interest, if you weren't two-tone, no one was interested. So that whole combination of things led to a great deal of frustration in the band. In particular me, as it was really my music that was being developed, and I was keyboard player and harmony singer. You know, it had been a lot of work for me. We'd had these 5 years and this frustration about the lack of professional interest, and I just got to a point where I felt I just can't take any more of this. And so I actually told the band that I'd had enough. I was going to leave.
So, after you left the band, did you sort of leave music?
I didn't recognise it at the time, but I believe at the time I was actually in a state of depression. As it happened, all around about that time, I'd met the lady who was to become my first wife. And I'd also started to get into computer programming because home computers were just sort of really starting to come to the fore. These two things between them kind of shifted my whole attention away from music to a great extent. Having been married for a couple of years, 2-3 years, I found I was still getting ideas for songs. I still wanted demos of the songs recorded. And it was like it was literally that bug inside you that you just can't shift. And so I spoke to my wife and said, you know, I've got to do something in music and with songwriting. I do need a decent keyboard to do it on. And she said, well, you can buy yourself a keyboard so long as it pays for itself. And through some contacts, I ended up playing with a couple of electric ceilidh bands, Aardvark and 5 Minutes to Midnight. Now, it was not because I was any great enthusiast of the music, but it was easy to do, it earned money, so it more than paid for the keyboard and earned a bit of extra income as well for the family. It was not too unfamiliar because an electric ceilidh band is very much like a rock band. It's just that it has a melodeon or an accordion instead of a lead singer. So, you know, it's quite energetic music that we did. And 5 Minutes to Midnight, there were times it came close to being heavy metal ceilidh.
Heavy metal ceilidh.
Quite loud and very popular. It was, in its way, quite enjoyable, and I got round to a lot of places. And the ceilidh scenes were very nice. Very often when you went to a gig, you'd do an hour and an hour and a half or an hour and a half music set of dancing, and then there'd be a break and there'd be food supplied, and then you'd do another hour and a half to finish off, more dancing. Because with Aardvark, the leader, Pete Graspy, was also the caller of the dances. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'm going to Google that, heavy metal ceilidh. In 2013, after many years apart, Paris reformed. Why would you want to do that?
Well, again, it was one of those set of circumstances falling into place. After I left Paris in about 1983, the other 4 members kept going, and they eventually brought in a guitarist. So the 5 of them, they had a much heavier sound than with Paris. Steve, the guitarist, was writing some songs, and so they continued trying to work as hard lines. Sadly, that sort of fizzled out in much the same way. Not through any falling out or anything like that, but just failure to get that interest, get the wheel, get the momentum going. And then in 2011, I believe it was, so yeah, you're talking 20 years and more after that happened, that guitarist that they brought in died of cancer. And they all went to the funeral, so that for the first time in over 20 years, all 4 of them found themselves under the same roof at the same time. And so they got together, and the bass player said, I've always wanted to record Parish's stuff in the way that it should have been recorded. And they decided, should we see about getting together to do some recording? You know, just for posterity, just so that we've got the recordings done. They said, yeah, we can probably do that, but we can't do it without Tim. So through one of their brothers, I got a message on Facebook. He'd found me on Facebook, and I got a message. Now, by this time, I had been a born-again Christian for 15 years at least, and I'd been involved in the Christian and faith-based music scene. It's very much my outlook of not looking back to the past, but it was like a little inner voice said, go along to the first meeting, see what happens. And so I did. And it was remarkable. We met up in the studio, and he just happened to have a drum kit set up. He just happened to have some keyboards set up. He just happened to have a guitar amp there. And within half an hour, we were playing some of the Paris material like it was yesterday. It was absolutely amazing. So that launched us into a 2-year phase, basically, of getting together every 2 or 3 months, having brushed up on 2 or 3 songs, and then over the weekend we'd get together and record all the basic tracks in Fran's studio. This led to, eventually ended up with 13 tracks that we thought, we've got to try and get this out as an album. And just to put the final polish on it, we had the tracks mastered by none other once again than Roger Lomas. Yes, indeed. And so that led to a 13-track album called Unfinished Business.
Where can people hear these tracks?
I believe it's still live on CD Baby. I think I've got at least some of the tracks on the Bandcamp website. Yeah, it is possible to hear these. And if you do it via CD Baby, you can actually get a physical CD with all the artwork. I don't think it costs a lot, 11 quid or something for 13 tracks, something like that. Yeah, I think it's still available that way.
And on YouTube, I believe, because that's where I've heard some.
Oh, you would mention that, wouldn't you? As we were doing this album in 2012-2014, the guy producing it had also worked with a guy who was trying to establish himself as a video producer. Once he mentioned to this guy that, what's his name, Chris Gernon, I think it was. Once he mentioned to Chris that we were doing this album, Chris said, well, you know, you've done so much for me, I'd be happy to do you a favour, do you a video of one of the songs if you like. We borrowed a back room in a pub near Rugby, set up there, and Chris and his colleague filmed us. And they produced the absolute amazing video of Paris Fashions. The production on that video is absolutely outstanding. It really is. But Paris's link with video does go back a little bit further than that. In that 1981, I think it was, we had a relationship with Q Studios near Leicester, and they were just getting into videos. They had recently adapted a large space to be a studio and put in a scoop in there, and they wanted a band to practice on, so we recorded with them a track called Peppermint Creams and did a video for that, which is, well, what word would you use, Ray? Weird, yes. Bizarre,
better. Yeah.
That is also available on YouTube as well.
You write and perform Christian music. Has that given you personal satisfaction?
It's been, if you like, the continuation of the lifelong thing. It's just that in the main, over the last 28 years, my music has been orientated to being faith-based, glorifying God. Not entirely. And I have still written in the same vein of kind of intelligent pop music, what you might call prog pop. I don't stick to the conventional 3-chord bashes. It's highly developed music. I believe you've heard 1 or 2 bits of it. So I have continued with that. I have at times made stabs of getting that better known. But you know, once again, it's a matter of knowing the right way to go about things and knowing some of the right people. And that's never really sort of fallen into place in a big way.
Together with Ian Campbell, you wrote and self-published 2 children's books. Can you tell me a bit about them?
Do you mind if I sort of go back to 2016 and what happened to the Parish Project there, just as a starting point? Because what happened was something happened within the Parish Project which absolutely brought the whole thing crashing down, caused various problems, caused me to go through a spell of depression, but that did mean that one way or another I was not at all involved in music. At the beginning of 2017, someone who I'd known through yet another project called Ian Campbell got in touch with me. I'd kind of been a bit involved with him in designing potential book covers for some writing that he'd done, helped him to sort of edit some books. And he phoned me up and said, Tim, I think God's got a new commission for us. And he told me how he'd been inspired, a title called The Adventures of Billy Bogbrush.
Still makes me laugh.
Well, it is meant to. He had a stab at writing a couple of stories. Although I liked the stories, I kind of more or less woke up one day with some very clear ideas of how these stories should be structured, and told him about this idea of Billy getting into a situation that he can't seem to sort out what to do, and yet he can work out step by step how to get through this situation and achieve what he needs to. So this kind of makes the stories very positive, and it's almost a bit like motivational speaking for kids. I had a go at developing this into one of the stories that he wrote. He liked it, and so we progressed from there. And I think it was by about November 2017, we actually had our first one self-published and printed, and I was holding a printed copy of the book in my hand. So that was quite a moment. And basically we've taken it on from there as best as we can. We went with another publisher to get that first book and a second one republished. Sadly, they did a very poor job of living up to their promises of getting us lots of publicity and newspaper articles and stuff, and none of that happened, despite paying them several £1,000. So although we've now got, I think it's about a dozen stories altogether, I've done illustrations for the two we had published and for, I think it's a couple of the other stories, but unfortunately the Billy Bob Brush thing is sort of on the back burner at the moment.
Well, that leads up to my next question. Are there any up-and-coming projects?
There's a friend of mine called Suresh Tadani, who has recently set up a channel that he calls Your Path to Financial Freedom, so that he can coach people in how to do everything from making domestic economies to investing in the stock market. And I've been filming him speaking about this and editing them together to be videos for him to upload onto YouTube. So he has a channel there called something like Financial Freedom Academy or something like that. So that's been keeping me busy, and there's probably another video or two to come. Another project I've been involved with is that about a year or so ago, a whole raft of interests came together and inspired me to design a keyboard layout for typing into your computer or your smartphone or whatever, which is an alternative to the regular QWERTY layout, and which should be, I believe, more efficient, easier to learn, certainly for hunt and peck typists. So I'm looking to see about getting a prototype of that made. There's an organisation set up by Birmingham University called Steamhouse, and I'm currently working with them and hope that within the next few months that will result in a physical prototype of it being made. Another project is that some months ago, again, another stream of various ideas came together and led me to what I thought would be a good sort of adventure thriller film screenplay. But I felt I couldn't do it on my own, so I approached another guy who I've been friends with for some time, Jan Williams, and he very sensibly suggested, well, why don't we, rather than write the screenplay, why don't we start off by writing the novel? So we have been writing the novel, doing huge amounts of background research. I would say we're about sort of 45% through the actual writing. I'm hoping that we will have at least a first draft finished sometime in October, and then we'll go on from there to see about getting it published.
That sounds exciting. Well, it's a good time to wrap up this interview. Thanks so much, Tim, for being my guest.
It's been my pleasure.
And best of luck with all your projects.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. A record producer needs many skills. They need to have a high degree of technical knowledge of recording equipment and project management skills. Also musical knowledge, creativity and listening ability in the studio to encourage and draw out optimal performances from artists or bands. And if those performers come away from the studio thrilled with the end results, then the producer has done his job. One is Roger Lomas, respected record producer and Grammy Award winner. Most musicians in Coventry and surrounding towns know of Roger, and quite a few have worked with him over the years. Roger Lomas didn't start out working his way up in a recording studio. In his formative years he decided he wanted to be a guitar player and join a professional band, and this while in his mid-teens. He shunned the idea of holding down a regular job for the rest of his working life, and he achieved those early ambitions when in 1966 he joined the Sorrows. He was 18 years old. The Sorrows had a song, Take a Heart, in the top 20, and their record label RCA needed the band to go over to Italy and promote the single, which had got into the Italian charts. The Sorrows spent 2 successful years in Italy, but then Roger quit and returned to Coventry, where over the next few years he played in a number of bands, including the Zips, Eggy and the Dodgers. In 1978, the Dodgers released an album, Love on the Rebound, and Roger is credited with writing 2 songs. But by then he was getting more into the recording side of the business by building a 4-track studio in his garden in Fozil, Coventry. Though by 1979 he was producing tracks at Coventry's iconic Horizon Studios. Come to think of it, I do recall Roger had a small 8-track studio on the same floor. I'm told he was helpful to local bands, providing valuable advice and free recording time to some bands. But he also enjoyed national success with bands such as The Selector, The Specials and Bad Manners. I still remember Bad Manners performing Can Can on Top of the Pops in 1981, reaching number 3 in the charts. On the 23rd of February 2003, at the 45th Grammy Awards at Madison Square Garden, New York, Roger won a Grammy Award which states, National Academy of Arts and Sciences, Roger Lomas, Producer, Engineer, Best Reggae Album 2002, Jamaican E.T. by Lee Scratch Perry. Surely that was his proudest achievement. In 2021, a 4-CD box set of Sorrows tracks was released on Grapefruit Records, and I believe the Sorrows did return to Italy for a tour. Roger still lives in Coventry, and with his own Rolo Productions, still producing music. That can't be bad. Coming up is a track by local band Paris from the album Unfinished Business, with Pat Miller vocals, Danny Liversley drums, Tim Constable keyboards and backing vocals, Fran Pettifer bass, and Steve Roberts guitar. Produced and engineered by Tim Constable and Fran Pettifer, and mastered by Roger Lomas. A Tim Constable song, Don't Go to the Roxy.
She's on the balcony singing love songs. Romeo's joined a jazz rock trio. He's sitting playing piano in Soho. Don't go to the Roxy too much. He's playing there every night. Don't go to the Roxy tonight. Stay and dance to the disco sound. Disco sound. Stay and dance, give a chance to the disco sound. Let your body lose your mind. Let your hands do the talking. Let your body keep the time. Let your feet keep on walking. Let your body lose your mind. Let your hands do the talking. Let your body keep the time. Let your feet keep on walking. Lucy talking to the pillow. She is practicing love talk to know what Romeo was booked to play in Brighton, but he goes through his act with no lights on. Don't go to the Roxy too much. He's playing there every night. Don't go to the Roxy tonight. Don't go to the Roxy too much. He's playing there every night. Don't go to the Roxy tonight.
That was Don't Go to the Roxy by Paris. Many thanks again to my guest Tim Constable. On the next episode, my guest will be drummer Paul Hooper. He's played in many bands, including Indian Summer and the Dodgers. I'll also be talking about Ticketmaster's dynamic pricing outrage, and also shine a spotlight on pirate radio stations. I think that's about it. Yep, I'm done. Till next time.